Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to spending I'm aiming to do this in about 20 minutes, right? To run through about what low code 3.0 is and how it can really impact your business and really the digital culture within your business. And therefore, as part of that, the digital transformation of your organization. So first of all, I really want to talk about the changes that we are seeing in the world right now. Things are changing like never before. It's funny, 5 to 7 years ago, actually, I was in WA, and I remember I was at Microsoft event presenting on the 4 mega trends that were going to affect the world. And I feel like this story is just amplifying. You would have noticed since about November in the past year that the whole talk of AI has exploded, right? Since OpenAI released ChatGPT, things have phenomenally taken off. And a lot of organizations are asking, how does this impact us? What does it mean? And a lot of employees are saying, how does this impact my career and what does it mean? And what do I need to do to make sure that I don't get replaced in these changes that are happening? And so if you look back, to pre-2020, the organizations that had gone through digital transformation up to that point were able to really accelerate coming out of the pandemic, or they were able to accelerate during the pandemic because their digital infrastructure was in place. There are other businesses, organizations, and I'm thinking of one particularly here in New Zealand, government department, who is still totally paper-based. This is around application for citizenship. And so when our country went into lockdown, that business, that organization, that government department went to lockdown because it was a paper-based organization. So what we've seen is that businesses that were already through their digital transformation journey came out stronger of the pandemic. And we believe we're on the cusp of something similar today. We're at this inflection point where the pressures today are different, but are growing. After years of disruption driven by the pandemic, industries are continuing to transform quickly. A global workforce is shrinking as the population ages, right? Those in that are hitting retirement are leaving their workforce, and often they've been involved in a lot of the way organizations have run to this point. And so therefore the information they have in their heads, etc., if not captured, is also leaving with them. And then at a macro level, labor productivity has stalled for years. And added to that, we're now part of this global community. We've seen security threats emerge and evolve faster than ever before. Just in in 2022, didn't we see 2 major headline cases in Australia, large organizations that were hit by cybersecurity, ransomware type attacks, and the impact it had to data being left unencrypted, sitting on the network, and then that falling into the wrong hands. And so as we look forward into the future, the opportunity is yours to lead an AI digital transformation, right? It's the technology is evolving at a phenomenal rate. Just since November, how much do you see talk within your own organization of AI and the impact that it'll have? I'm seeing it like when I am looking to do any new presentation or posting a blog that I do on LinkedIn, I start with a first draft using AI to assist me. I then, go into editor mode after that and I filter it out. I provide AI that I use with a whole data set that I'm going to be speaking on. So it knows the context of what I'm talking about, and you'll be finding this is really starting to impact. In fact, look at this report from Gartner here. In 2021, less than 1% of the world's data was from generative AI. And then by 2025, we're going to see 10%, probably larger than 10%, will be from generative AI. And added to that, another one, a stat from Gartner here, is more than 65% of application development activity will be in low code by 2024. The thing is about low code, why has it become so prevalent in the last 5 years? Why did around 5 years ago, Microsoft really started to think strongly in this area and go, what do we need to do to address a change in market? 750 million new apps will be built by 2025. These apps are not designed for consumers as a rule. They're designed for business people inside the organization. That's more than the last 40 years combined. There's a 4 million people shortfall in the developer pool globally. If there's 4 million developers short to hit these numbers, where are those developers going to come from to build the apps and the solutions needed inside organizations that are designed to run the unique way your organization runs? That stat again, 65% of application dev activity by 2024 is going to be in low code inside the organization. And so you would have heard this term, citizen developer, business developer, or shadow IT. And I've worked in a lot of organizations over my career. I've been 30 odd years now into my career. I'm showing my age. And of course, we've known about shadow IT for a very long time. In fact, recently, McKinsey put out a white paper, and it's worth doing a quick Google to take a look at that and the impact that shadow IT has had on organizations positively. Because what happens is that when staff can't get the software tools from the IT part of their business, what do? They build them themselves. What's the most common solutions that the data shows us is actually integrating one data set with another data set. This system needs that data that we have internally. That system needs that data. How do we get it across there? And Excel has become one of those massive applications, never intended to be mission critical, but in so many of the enterprises we go into, we find Excel and access databases everywhere for mission critical applications. And when we look at this, if we tap into this potential resource of shadow IT, there's a risk and a reward here. One, the reward is they know how your business runs, right? The people at the coalface really understand how your organization runs, and the opportunity, if there was just an app that did that, if there was an automation of this function, I could get half an hour to an hour of my day back. The risk, though, is that activity from shadow IT is happening in silos. I did a blog post this morning on LinkedIn, and you'll see the risk of shadow IT if it is not engaged with and brought onto a platform that can be governed, that can have digital guardrails put in place so data can't be lost accidentally or on purpose outside your organization, or data breaches to happen. And so if we look at business as usual, this is live and well in every one of your organizations. Low code 1.0. This is the current status quo. If you do nothing today, your organization will be running like this. And I work with enterprise organizations. Just last week, a new customer came on board with us, one of the top 4 banks in Australia and New Zealand. And they have got, as you can imagine, a lot of these app sprawl landscape outside of IT's control. In fact, 400 in this organization, apps or solutions had been identified that didn't sit under IT governance as such. And what's the biggest offender in the space is Excel. 34 years ago, Microsoft brought this product to market. People started to use it to enrich and manipulate data, to interpret it, to understand it. And it became the mission critical tool for many organizations. I used to work in the medical industry before I got into IT. Our number one tool for monitoring, right now, as a New Zealand at the time for 7 years, was Excel. And it was used to handle all the monitoring of biological equipment in the medical industry across New Zealand. And I mean, the predecessor was paper. It was a clipboard and a piece of paper. So Excel took us up that level, but everything in Excel is highly portable. It's highly movable. It's highly transferable. I spent a couple of years working in one of the banks in New Zealand. And guess what our loan origination tool was? Excel. All mortgages in New Zealand went through an Excel spreadsheet, and you had to make sure in the morning and across the country that you had the latest version, that had the current rates, that, oops, no rework was needed. If you'd got a wrong version, you're going to have to rework all that process because the data was incorrect. It was massively portable. You could attach it to an email and send it to a competing bank to show what the current model mortgages have been assessed on at that point. Then organizations have got either point solutions or one-off solutions. We see a lot of this. I remember getting contacted by a company that had a piece of software built, and they kept employing the one person for over 20 years that had built the software because no one knew how it ran unless that person was running it. And that person had carved themselves a pretty position in that company because they knew the employer needed them to stay in the business. We were called in to create actually a new solution so the employer wasn't held to ransom. Then there's this one-off solutions. What's the licensing? Is it patched? Is it up to date? Is any security threats being actively monitored? Or is it a orphaned app that is sitting in your organization who you don't even know who the developers were? You don't even, are they still in existence anymore? And then if we look at the final stage of low-code 1.0 is the SaaS providers that have come to market and offered the ability to put your credit card over and actually grab a point solution, skirting around IT procurement processes, securing, potentially giving your data into a system that could be outside the legal geography of your country, and then also risk of data breaches of their systems that you might have PII data in, you might have IP in it, but nobody in your organization would know because they don't know that you're necessarily using that SaaS solution through your web browser as part of your day-to-day processes. If we look at what IT has done to address it, they looked at what's called the IT workload mountain and the move to cloud, right? And we can see IT have been solidly working through this kind of model of retire, replace, rebuild, refactor, rehost, or remain. And they make the decisions about what needs to go to the cloud, what needs to stay, what is not at end of life and we need to keep. And if you have a look through the middle section here, the Microsoft Power Platform, made up with a range of low-code tools, actually fits or addresses this entire middle layer in the story. And so IT, for maybe the last 5 to 7 years, have been working at chipping away at this mountain of software assets, etc., within inside your organization. The problem is what they thought was a mountain was actually the tip of an iceberg. They were addressing all that stuff they touched. They weren't addressing everything that was not sanctioned by IT. All those tools, all those mission critical applications that are sitting in Access and Excel and any other number of solutions from way back when was not under their control. There was no single sign-on, so we didn't know who was accessing it. We didn't know how many people were accessing it. We didn't know what the telemetry data. And if we look at where we are now in low-code 2.0, this has been exacerbated by the cloud. And what happened is people have gone out and they've bought point solutions that they put their credit card in, took in a year's membership, and they've got these SaaS solutions from market. And you'll notice actually in my list of SaaS solutions I hear, it's coming up right now, is Power Apps. And if you're using Power Apps or Power Automate only as a strategic initiative in your organization, you're just creating another siloed set of data. You're not allowing the business to make the most informed business decision based on your data because it's all siloed in these various systems. So that's our low-code 2.0. And if we have a look at what this looks like, we have these kind of 3 steps to 3.0. Number one, as I said, talked about that the standalone apps that you can have deployed on your local computer. Then in that SaaS world, we had a range of apps. You know, one of our most common requests we're getting from customers in the enterprise at the moment is to replace Nintex, because Nintex filled a really important gap in SharePoint for a long time, which is around automation over formed capture data. The thing is, the Nintex licensing is yet just another part of the licensing landscape for IT. And if they're already licensed on the Power Platform, which most organizations have some form of licensing with Microsoft in that space, they're going, hang on a second, let's remove that licensing. Let's remove the ability that we need to keep supporting that product. Let's remove the ongoing monthly renewals on it, and let's move that forms, that automation experience to Power Platform. Now, these products were there because there wasn't a solution for many years in market. It's just that the world has changed, right? Things have moved on. And if we look at taking this type of platform approach to what we're doing, we can really show the new economics of software development. The original 1.0 was around opportunity cost, right? I can be more productive if I had a spreadsheet that could do a bunch of what I repeat and do all the time. I can move then to 2.0, cost per solution. I put my credit card across and I get massive benefit because someone has thought about what we need to do in business, but it came with risk, right? And it was a per user type model. And then if we look at the new economics of the 3.0 world, it looks like this. And this is a financial summary of a report that you can get where 30 customers were interviewed by Forrester with an investment of premium Power Platform capability. And what they found was that the first year there was an over $1.17 million benefit on top of the cost to implement and the cost of the licensing to those organizations. In fact, the compound annual growth rate was 133.5% or 8.3 million over a 3-year period. And why is this? The reason is that if you license somebody on the Power Platform as a user, a per app user, what happens? A named user. What happens is that you get this benefit, you get the leverage of every other app that's built that individual uses. There's no additional licensing cost. So whether it's one app and you pay the license fee or 1,000 apps for that individual to use inside the organization, it's still the same license fee. So you get this massive compounding effect as you build more solutions. You're not spending more on the Microsoft licensing piece, maybe outside a bit of data storage, depending what that is. Let's look at some customers that have done this really well. Shell have got 4,000 what they call do-it-yourself developers. These are sometimes referred to as makers. They're sometimes referred to as shadow IT, business developers, or citizen IT. These are folks that are building solutions inside Shell at scale. 3 million savings in one app alone on deployment in the refining furnace trimming, and then 75 apps in the first year. They're having a 35 million impact and saving to the business. I was just working in November, December last year with a global mining company in WA. And the interesting thing was we run an innovation challenge with them. And out of that innovation challenge came 69 app ideas from the frontline workers inside their organization. A winning app was chosen in the first week of December. They have told us, their executive told us, this app, if it was built, would have a $27 million impact on their business. That app went live about 3 weeks ago inside that business for them to achieve that return on investment of $27 million in savings. So it's exciting times in the space. HSBC, another customer here, deployed to 12 markets in one day, the app they produced, and the payback period was 6 days. Phenomenal return on investment, 74% reduction in app development cost, and 188% ROI over 3 years. Now, the thing is that you will have in your organization very large systems of record, like SAP, for example. And what we're seeing is that SAP is moving to what they call clean core and keeping the core system clean so it can be developed, so it can be upgraded going forward. And so a lot of then the other apps that need to interface with that system can be outside SAP. And this is where there's been a marriage, if you like, between SAP and the Power Platform. And we're seeing it with Oracle and ServiceNow and other major products inside organizations where through APIs we can consume, update, enrich data, but in a full, governable, controllable manner so that risk and exposure is mitigated as much as possible. So let's look at what this looks like. So let's say if you decide that you want to go down this Power Platform path, one, it lowers the risk of your organization, right? All those shadow IT apps can be moved onto the platform, and therefore, because of single sign-on, we can see who's accessing, what the frequency is. Is there a current blocker in the process or the automation? Hey, let's fix that and let's make it more efficient in what it does. We can look at the apps and the apps that need to be, go through that kind of pyramid process I talked about with the mountain of software technology and make a decision about what happens in rationalizing that. And then this is, I think, one of the most powerful stories and why I've been an advocate of Microsoft for so long, is that there's 10 times the developers available to you to build these apps. And why I say this excites me, because we are going into a world where digital is going to permeate everything with AI. And organizations more than ever need to be equipping their staff to have digital mindsets and digital skill sets to be able to take advantage and not get left behind. There are so many stories of people that have careers working on the Power Platform all over the world because they moved from not just their current, what they have deep knowledge about job role, to actually building their digital skills and enabling apps and automations to be built in their organization. Let's just have a look at that landscape. If we look at the population of potential people that can build solutions and then their technical skill sets needed, it looks a bit like this. You can see the Power Platform takes already known skill sets like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, SharePoint, Access, and all those skills can be leveraged to onto the Power Platform. But then those that are more hard code developers and things like C#, .NET, that type of thing, they also can build on the platform. The advantage for them is that they don't have to think about every time they build a new solution, all the app underlying architecture that needs to go in place. Things like, how are we going to authenticate this? How are we going to bug track on this? How are we going to make sure ALM, application lifecycle management process, is followed or adhered to that meets the governance standards of the organization? What they can do is the time to value of the app can be just around the bit that creates IP, intellectual property, that is meaningful for your business and the way your organization runs right now. So as I wrap up, what does success look like? First of all, we commonly would look at what are the flagship applications that make up that architecture of an organization? What are the lines of business solutions that exist at a department level that are being used? And then how are the individual citizen devs, how are they being accommodated from our local productivity? Could I automate half hour of my day and make me more productive so I can focus on the things that is really driving value, as opposed to those things that are just rote copy and paste type work? And then we move into establishing a center of enablement or a community of practice. And this is inside your organization, a community of people that help cross-skill each other and bring the digital knowledge of your organization up to a new level. It's encouraging a mindset of, can this be digitized and how would we go about doing that within the organization? In the past, partners like the one I'm working for would have come in and we would have done everything for you. Those days are over. Now we're seeing much more, at least 60% done by the organizations that we work with. And we're just bringing the broader knowledge across and enabling the teams within your environments. And so it really creates a multiplying effect. The person, the low coder that builds their first app a year ago, they've probably built about 5 or 10 by now. They've got good at doing this. They're doing this at scale, and they are an untapped resource sitting inside your organization. If we look at what this looks like, we look at it from what's the most common collaboration platform now used inside of businesses? Microsoft Teams, right? How do you drive velocity with automation? How do you make sure you've got a high trust data platform that's connected to everything, all the data inside the organization? How do you tap into systems that have been in place for some time, but you can't re-platform them? Right? They are there because they're a critical business application, might handle loan origination, might handle some very complex processes in manufacturing for your organization. You're not going to replace those, but you can still enrich and use the data from those systems. And then there's the concept of no-cliffs extensibility, which is really comes into play because of Azure. There's no limit to how we can bring, for example, OpenAI straight in via APIs in Azure and into those apps being built. Over 1,000 plus connectors already available to connect your solution to other software inside the organization. Dataverse is the center data system. And then, of course, your apps, your automation, and then everything actually can be positioned inside Teams, inside iOS apps, inside Android apps, or deployed on the desktop. The choice is really yours. And so this is the new world of low-code 3.0. If we look at what Satya said in a recent earning report, Power Apps is the undisputed market leader in low-code and no-code, now with 10 million monthly active users on the platform. So in Australia and New Zealand, on the scale of things, we're working with one of the largest deployments, which is over 44,000 seats of Power Apps in the Southern Hemisphere. But there's not too many that get up to that size, right? Because 90% of the world population live in the Northern Hemisphere. But for us, we're seeing many, like this 129 organizations, although there are 10,000 users. There's a few of those in New Zealand. There's quite a few in Australia that are now using the Power Platform at scale. 91% of Fortune 500 companies are now using the Power Platform. So what are the steps that you can take if you want to get involved? Number one, Catalyst funding. This is a funds that comes from Microsoft that allows up to $100,000 to assess an opportunity and see whether it could be developed on the Power Platform. If you're interested in that, get in touch with me. I can take you on that journey. We've done multiple Catalyst engagements in Australia and New Zealand. We can run an innovation challenge, what I talked about before, where we can come into the organization and over a a multi-week period, do some activities that generate interest, that allow your staff to start thinking about their day-to-day processes and how they could be digitally transformed, and create a whole list of ideas that could take your organization forward. App in a Day training is another tool that we provide here at IBM that allows you to actually go out and sit staff on. It's a free training course, and they'll get to experience all these different low-code tool sets and see, hey, how would that work in my business unit? We encourage you to build a community of people inside your organization that can share the common learning paths that they're on, the skills that they're developing together. So you raise, just like that old saying goes, a rising tide floats all boats. It's kind of like a community that's gelling together. All the skill set of those involved come to a new level. And we recommend establishing a center of enablement, right? And part of a center of enablement is a center of excellence, which was all that governance and monitoring layer to make sure your organization is protected. And with that, we would look at scaling. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. As I say, I will make the recording available if you want to connect with me. Mark.smith@ibm.com is how you can get in touch with me, or you can scan the QR code. That'll take you to my LinkedIn profile, and we can connect there, where twice a week I do posts around low code on LinkedIn, and I also do a podcast generally twice a week around low code as well. Thank you very much for attending today.